Welcome everybody to the Frances Fogel Story Strategist series of conversations. I am Frances Fogel. I've decided to call myself a story strategist, and I run a series of conversations which you can find both on my podcast and on YouTube, and they are dedicated to helping purposeful businesses. I'm focusing on London and the southeast of England to do better by themselves, for their people, and for the world. And the conversations are focusing on two types of people. They're either showcasing what I think good looks like amongst purposeful businesses who are showing up in the ways that I think purposeful businesses can, or they're sort of storytelling experts, or experts in the areas that I try to help founders and leaders of purposeful businesses in. And one of those areas is helping your people. Today we'll be talking about employees and teams to feel more significant, in the words of Seth Godin, more engaged, and not just with a sense of well-being, but really with a sense of kind of responsibility and as I say, significance in the workplace. And I'm slightly starstruck to have today two people who are Sunday Times #1 best-selling authors, who are such authorities on the subject of what we're going to call work style, and they can describe that in a bit more detail in a moment. They are Lizzie Penny and Alex Hirst, who are the co-founders and leaders of the Workstyle Revolution, which is both an agency, a community, and I would say, yes, a revolution. They are on a mission to change the concept of how to work in the world today, and they are authorities on the evolution of the 9-to-5 life into something much, much more exciting. So what I want to do is welcome you both and invite you to give us a sense of why you have come to this work yourself, bit of a history, if that's okay, personal history. And what I'd like to get out of this conversation is some inspiration for founders of businesses who might be thinking, how can I better engage people, and what do people really need in this day and age? And if you'd be so kind as also to sort of share some case studies as to how that's looked really successful insofar as what you've done for organizations, that would be absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for being here, Lizzie and Alex. Who's going to go first?
Well, thank you for having us. I think Alex should go first with his with just to explain a bit about Workstyle, and then we'll each share a bit about what brought us on the journey to being here talking to you today, I guess.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Lizzie. So, yeah, hi, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us. As you say, we are best-selling authors. We wrote a book. It's called Workstyle, A Revolution for Wellbeing, Productivity and Society. But I think more than that, we're the creators of the word workstyle, which is really what we want to talk about today. And it's a word that gives everybody the freedom to choose when and where they work for themselves. Granted, it's a word we came up with in the pub, but like all good ideas. But it is a word that we desperately need now that so much of the work we do can be done anywhere and at any time. And we believe that everybody should be able to fit their work around their life, and work style is the word that makes that possible.
That is the concept, Francis, in terms of what we believe in. In terms of our journey to get there, I would say Alex and I both care profoundly about this, and for different reasons. So for me, it was when I had my first child, which was almost a decade ago. Goodness me, that has flown by. When my eyes were really opened to enduring inequalities at work. And I'm kind of embarrassed, given what Alex and I do now, to say that until then I was relatively ignorant about the people who were structurally excluded from work, as long as 9 to 5, 5 days a week was the prevailing way of working. But since then, so to begin with, it was having my son Finn that kind of led me to that conversation in the pub with Alex. But since then, I had serious complications in my second pregnancy with my twin daughters, Zoe and Megan, that meant I was on bed rest for 9 weeks, and had to undergo surgery and all the like. And being able to work in my own way, being judged on my output rather than my circumstances through that time, was just transformative for me. And since then, I've moved across the country from London to Bristol with virtually no disruption whatsoever to my career. And then I went through breast cancer treatment in 2020, already a bit of a screwed up year. And so I had 8 rounds of chemotherapy, 20 rounds of radiotherapy. I'm now on ongoing medication. And again, being able to work in a Workstyle way through that has been transformative for me. And almost unbelievably, since then, my husband's been diagnosed with cancer. So now I fit my work around supporting him through his treatment, managing the side effects of my medication, trying to stay healthy myself, and looking after 3 small children. So I think it's fair to say that what started as a conversation in the pub has actually become something that, for me personally, have been really profound, and that I can therefore relate to many of those groups who are structurally excluded from work. And I really understand the importance of this as a revolution, not just as a way of working.
I did not know that about your husband. I did know the other bits and bobs. So I'm not going to say I'm sorry, because knowing you based on everything that you put out there, this is another growth opportunity. And as you say, moment to kind of do good in the world and change things, I'm sure. But nevertheless, wow, what another hurdle to get
another
over.
challenge. But I think everyone has challenges in their lives, and being able to fit your work around it can be an incredibly empowering thing. I think for me, it means that work has played a really positive role in my life over a decade that has seen some really personally challenging moments. So yeah, no, thank you. It's a roller coaster, but we're taking it 1 week at a time. So
I really hear you. And yeah, maybe we can use this as a springboard, and just to share with anyone listening, and also with you both, because you probably won't know this, but I am a mother of 2 children, and my youngest son has got multiple severe life-threatening allergies and was born just before lockdown. And so a lot of what you're saying very much resonates with me. I've given birth to 2 businesses since then, which literally saved my life on a mental health basis. And balancing work with children, number one, in itself is one of the reasons why I love everything that you stand for. But to your point about your husband, I often talk about how everyone has something, and we often get the pity cocking of the head and the eyes when people hear about Raz, and that's completely understandable. But in a way, yes, I'm an optimist, and yes, I'm a spin doctor, if you like, coming from a marketing and comms world. And I genuinely believe that it's been another way for us to kind of navigate the world in a sense that we have grown as a family. And actually, interestingly, my focus on purposeful businesses in London and the Southeast comes out of the fact that we couldn't go abroad with Raz because it was just too much of a faff with all the allergies, but also expensive, and when you've got younger children, it's difficult to budget. So what we did instead was I geeked out on all of the kind of glamping and luxury camping and cabins that are available to us to go as a family on holidays. And it turns out that therefore we were having some nice sort of more environmentally friendly holidays, and brought my attention to my focus group, my ideal client now, the kind of businesses I want to support, and the environmental impact that they have. So there you go. There's a sort of positive spin on how a child with multiple severe life-threatening allergies has kind of given me a sense of purpose in my work. So I just wanted to share that, because it can't it? It can really kind of spin things for the positive for work. Alex, I can see you're muted. He's so excited to talk. He's still muted. Can you unmute yourself? You don't need to mute yourself.
Sorry, just because I didn't want the microphone to pick up my vigorous nodding along while you were talking, because I just think what you said is just so right, but also a story that we hear a lot in the people that we talk to about Workstyle, which is at some point in everyone's life, things change, and what that can do for you is give you a whole new way of looking at the world and a whole new sense of purpose and desire and energy to do something about it. And we talk a lot about how life changes and every life is different, and that therefore work needs to evolve with those changes in life. And I think for a lot of the kind of early parts of our careers, we just assume things are always just going to be the same, and then things happen in life that completely change our outlook, and doing something about it is the great opportunity for people. And what you've done sounds fantastic, and there's lots of good that comes out of that. And for me, it was the same as well. I mean, for me, it was burnout. So I reached burnout in the traditional mold of work, and decided, well, actually, it was the thing that I talked to Lizzie about in the pub that night, where we came up with Workstyle. So Lizzie was starting a family, I'd gone through burnout. And it's those moments in our lives when almost where choice is removed in many ways, that forces us to reframe what our options are and what we do with it. And that's really where Workstyle came from, which is, okay, if we don't want to be going into work and be judged on our presence and be there 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, then what? And what is the basis for collaboration when you have no working hours and no fixed place of work? How do you bond people? And Workstyle was the word that we came up with to do just that, and to create new language for people to say, well, my work style is created to fit around my obligations as a carer or as a parent, or my work style fits around my health condition, and therefore it's this. You know, I work from home, or I work from hospital, or whatever it might be. And normalizing that conversation has been revolutionary for us in feeling like we can choose when we work for ourselves and everyone else who works in a work style way. And we've been doing it at Hoxby, as you said at the start, for the 10 years since, to prove that it can work. And without wishing to sound like a shameless plug, the book that you referenced at the start and that we've mentioned distills everything that we've learned over that period of time about doing it, and the research that we've conducted, longitudinal research that we've conducted over the years of doing it as well, that helps everyone else to see the opportunity and to adopt work style working themselves, on the basis that what we know and what is really common sense is that being able to fit your work around your life reduces a lot of the stress and the tension that happens when the two come against each other. They tend to rub against each other. And when you can make the space for work to fit around life, it improves your well-being. And the research proves that that is transformative for productivity as well, because of the increased state of well-being. And Lizzie's talked about this as well, but the last thing that the book talks about is the benefit to inclusion, which is massive, in that there are so many people who can't access work in its traditional 9 to 5 place-based format. And so removing those barriers of time and place and working with people on an individualized basis rather than a one-size basis is really going to be key to unlocking human potential and diverse workforces in the future.
Love it. Thank you so much. You know, when you have those conversations, you're like, oh my God, there's so many things. Oh, where do I start? I mean, I want to talk to you about a few things, so many things, but one of the things is reframing. So both Lizzie and you, Alex, I'd like to know, maybe you can tell listeners a bit about your background in the kind of creative marketing comms agency sense, because all three of us come from a place of trying to help people to package up stories essentially in a way that's going to be of service to them, to their people, to the world. That's kind of essentially the thing that underpins the three of our work. And I want to bring in the dreaded drama triangle here, because I think what we've been talking about so far is kind of repurposing, reframing stories that can otherwise be seen from the viewpoint of a victim into something more creative and more proactive, productive. And you've talked about that, Alex. How do you kind of capitalize on a situation which possibly might have been seen in one way into something wonderful? So that's one thing I'd really love both of you to talk to. And in kind of connection with that is your other point, Alex, which is so my sort of presentation of this concept is that you can either pay a PR agency $4,000 a month to go off in silo and come up with some sort of shiny spin on stuff for you and a story. There's so much storytelling in marketing at the moment. The two things that bother me about that are, one, people are doing excellent storytelling for marketing and sales, but not translating it to the other three things that I think are really important, which is employee engagement, customer loyalty, and community care, which I don't understand, because you can use the same brilliant story across all four. And indeed, it's much more compelling if you don't do things in silo. But as I say, you can also just spend money on agencies in silo working across those four different sectors, or you don't need to do that. You can work with the likes of Lizzie, Alex, and myself and use one story in a number of ways. And we have very different target audiences. I think you guys work with huge organizations, and it'd be wonderful to hear about the range. And of course, I'm working with probably smaller organizations. So we're not competitors. I see us as being in a kind of family of people changing, revolutionary, whatever, trying to work with founders, leaders, companies one at a time to change some of this stuff. But yeah, sorry, a lot there. Be good to know your thinking at this point.
And I'll talk about the marketers and stories bit, and then Alex can talk about the kind of collective intelligence and range of organizations that we've kind of worked with in this way stuff. For us, I think it's really interesting because Alex and I both have a background in marketing. Alex more on the event side and me more on the kind of classical marketer side. And sometimes we feel like we've been running our own business. We've been CEOs for 10 years now. In a way, that feels like another life, but I actually think it's a really important part of what we do. And I think never more so than the stories that we talk about. So you can't change what happens to you in your life, but you can change how you react to it. I know personally from the cancer diagnosis, there are times when, however much you want to rise above it, you just feel utterly miserable and broken by something. But over time, you can channel that energy into different ways of using your own story. And I think that, as you say, everyone has their own shit going on. But certainly what Alex and I have been through over the last few years, we have decided to channel that into having a positive impact on the world. And what that means is sharing our personal stories, helping people to understand why we care so profoundly about this. And actually, I received a message this morning from someone who's reading the book and just sent a message to say thank you for your openness and your candor in the book. And when we were writing it, we did feel a bit like, we're putting our whole selves out there. There's something a bit scary about that with a book. You do all the writing and then you wait months before you get any feedback or support for that. And that is a bit scary, but I think the thing we found is it drives real reciprocity. So when we share, people share back. And I think the start of this conversation with you, Frances, is a great example of that. We didn't know that about your son until we had this conversation. And so it's almost become a kind of happy accident that because of our marketing backgrounds, because we want to share our stories and for other people to feel empowered to share their stories, we create a really profound connection, and we have almost happened upon starting to drive a revolution towards this shared vision to create a happier, more fulfilled society through a world of work without bias. And I think the reason that we've done that is because we aren't just creating a work community at Hawksby. We're creating human-to-human relationships. And we've now started an open community at Workstyle Revolution, and you can join it at workstylerevolution.com/join for anyone to come and just be part of what we're trying to create. And what never ceases to amaze us is how people are willing to be open about their stories. And the vast majority of them in that context, they are repurposing them and they are reframing them in order to bring those stories and create a positive change as a result of them. And that inspires Alex and I every day. We had to pick only a small number of Workstyle stories to go in the Workstyle book. But that is the thing that motivates us every day, is hearing different people's stories and why for them it's so powerful being able to fit their work around their lives rather than the other way around. So yeah, you can take us out of the marketing context, but we're still marketers deep down. So Alex, I don't know if you want to take the question about in terms of the range of organizations we've worked with and sort of the value of that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I would say, I think, as well, is that I think one of the things that people used to say to us when we first started talking about work style was, oh yeah, we have flexible working too. And it always used to really frustrate us, because if you talk about flexible working, you invariably are talking about a group of people who do flexible working, who exist within an inflexible system of work. And the book talks a lot about this, but the basic 8-hour day is a 200-year-old concept that predates electricity, never mind the internet. So if we're talking about flexible working, we're assuming we have an inflexible system. And what we're saying is, forget the industrial age system. Work style is a system that enables individual choice. And you don't have that if you have somebody telling you where you need to be, or what hours you need to work, or when that needs to be done. So what we're talking about is autonomy, like never before, but that's fit for the digital age. And that's why we wanted to create a new word for it, was to help people understand the real importance of this, and the fact that it is different to anything that's gone before. Flexible working, by the way, is more than 70 years old. So it's not like that's a new idea either. So, and by the way, it hasn't made any meaningful difference to the excluded groups that we talk about in terms of reducing those gaps of people who want to work, and those that do. So we need something fundamentally different. And that's one of the reasons why we came up with the word, and why we're hoping to kind of reframe the solution. That is, we can all have a work style, and in doing that, we can all be included in the joy of doing meaningful work. And what that's meant for Hoxby, so Hoxby being the company that we created to prove that work style working works and can be a reality for people, is very quickly we found that we were attracting a really diverse group of people to come and want to be part of it. So people from all of these groups, subsets of society, who didn't want a 9 to 5 or Monday to Friday approach to work. They wanted something more individualized. So what we built is a community of those people who come together to deliver projects for clients, and most of those projects have been in the kind of creative and communications space. And we've worked with brands like Unilever, AIA, Merck, Amazon, lots of large companies, as well as working with smaller companies as well. But what's incredible is that we're able to put together teams of people for every brief. So the people, just for the purposes of clarity, the people who come together within the Hoxby community are all freelance. And what we do is assemble them into specific teams for each brief that a client comes to us with. And so what that means is that we're able to access incredibly specific individual talent for each brief, but also we're able to curate teams for their diversity of experience and of culture and background. So what that enables us to do is put teams together that are collectively more intelligent than teams of people who are brought together from a finite talent pool, from a fixed business. And in the book, we talk about the potential for collective intelligence, but in simple terms, it's the opposite of groupthink. So when putting together teams, if you put them together in groups of people who look, think, talk, act, and sound the same, you're likely to get lots of agreement, but not necessarily the right or better answers to whatever the challenges might be. Where you can bring together diversity of thought and enable that diversity of thought to collaborate, then you increase the collective intelligence of the group and can arrive at more rounded solutions. So that's the science that we look to apply in the way we put teams together. And though most of the work we've done over the years has been in creative and comms, we're now increasingly being asked to apply the same logic to transformation projects, helping organizations change the way they work in order to be more like us, more collectively intelligent, more diverse, more culturally integrated. So Hoxby is moving into doing a lot more work like that. But one very simple application, I'll just give you one example, is where we're doing, we actually do this for a few brands, where we have centralized PR and communications team, and by centralized I mean it's online, so it's not in any fixed place, but the strategic thinking is held in one team, and the delivery of that strategy is delivered by PR and comms specialists in markets where the brand operates. So, for example, the brand might be ASICS, the footwear sports brand, who wanted to deliver consistent communications across multiple territories in the Nordics. We were able to put together sports-specific communications experts in each of those markets across the Nordics and unite them behind a singular comms strategy in the delivery of an ongoing campaign, and we continue to do that. And what that enables them to have is incredibly localized knowledge in terms of how the campaign and the activity is delivered, but also a global view strategically to ensure that that's delivered in a consistent way. Without getting too boring kind of marketing comms, that simply is a better use of talent, but it's also creating work for talent that otherwise wouldn't be working. So it's incredible for society, it's incredible for those individuals, and it's also brilliant for the brands in question.
Brilliant, thank you. And I actually do want to pick up on this point about marketeers, which Lizzie also talked about when Lizzie said, you know, you can take the marketeer out of the company, but you can't, or whatever. I can't quite remember the way you said it, but you know, I'm not sure if you two are aware of this, but I also can currently run something called the Better, Bolder, Braver community, which actually was born out of being part myself of the Happy Startup School, which is where I first encountered you two, because I heard you a year or so ago on the Friday Fireside, which is their lovely conversation series. And that's how I'm aware of you. But Better, Bolder, Braver is considered by some to be the kind of sister community of the Happy Startup School. And it's a community of coaches or people helpers, as Simon, my co-founder, and I like to call them. And what we do over there is we, as people with collectively 40 years of experience in marketing and communications, we help them to put themselves out there as people helpers with greater confidence, clarity, and joy. And our manifesto is about tackling the toxic marketing bullshit that we see pervading the coaching industry. And we sort of felt if we don't stand up and do something about this, then it's just going to get completely railroaded by people talking about 10xing your income and making a quick buck, which we know not to be a reality or a sustainable sort of place to be for coaches. But also we were really moved to do something by the kind of sense of overwhelm that we were seeing that was breeding in people, and wanted to kind of do right by marketeers like us who can use marketing and comms skills for much better good. So in setting up Better, Bolder, Braver, we hoped to help people put themselves out there, but also, as I say, to kind of tackle this awful sense of what marketing is, which I think you guys exemplify as well. You know, you show the kind of antidote of the strength of storytelling, the strength of marketing and comms, the strength of PR. And you've just said, Alex, how, you know, when you've got a sort of authoritative hat on as to what a good way of doing PR is, then you can have, you know, wonderful effects and change the world, and system changes can be made as a result of good communication. So I just wanted to bring that in as well.
And I think that's really true. And we're a B Corp and a social enterprise. Hoxby always has been a B Corp and a social enterprise. And I think increasingly we only work with organisations with whom we align with their ethos. I think it's more motivating for us as individuals, but I also just think we do better work because I think we are profoundly connected to them, be that sustainability, you know, the great mental health work that ASICS has done. The clients that we work with and the projects that we work on are really motivating. And that can either be inherent in the organisation, that they are doing good in the world, but it might also be that the project we feel is doing good within their organisation. And I think as we've taken on more and more HR transformation work, and embedding autonomous working, whether it's through pilots or through a bigger strategy, or whether it's supporting leadership in their remote leadership skills so they're more inclusive. Those are the projects that really excite us. And I think it's interesting what you say about having clarity, but also joy around your offer. Because I think the thing that we found is the more of those sorts of projects we do, the more we enjoy it, the more joy we bring into the world, the more joy we bring into the project, the more everyone gets energy from us doing that. So I think we always started out with an intention to create a positive impact on the world. But I think over time, we've become more and more dedicated to making sure that those are the projects that we prioritize and take on.
Can you talk a little bit about social enterprise? I mean, I have a random sort of history of social enterprise behind me as well. So over the last 20 years, I've worked in comms in-house in a number of environments. I've also sat on the board of a poverty relief social enterprise and education charity for 7 years, and I ran a foundation which funds projects in those spaces, which meant that I deeply embedded myself in the world of social enterprise to try to understand the landscape and do some mapping. But I think what would be really useful for people here is to understand how you went about establishing yourselves as a social enterprise, and perhaps anyone listening might be considering it and thinking, well, what makes for a social enterprise? Might that be a path for me as a founder of a small business, trying to do good? Can you say how you came to that decision yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, from the inception of the word Workstyle, from that very conversation in the pub, the very first conversation, Alex and I wanted to create a positive impact on the world. And I think it's been it comes with its own challenges, running your own business, as you and many people listening will know. But I think the main benefit of that, and what is so empowering, is that you choose where you spend your time, which clients you work with, what kind of projects you're working on. So the biggest thing I think about being a social enterprise is that in your articles of association, you have your social objects. So it's almost like from the very inception of that business, you are saying this business exists to leave a lasting legacy on the world, to create a positive change in the world. And I think there's something really psychological about that. And, Alex and I have strong feelings about psychological contracts with work. Both of our journeys led us to essentially redefine our psychological contracts with work. And it sounds like you have also been on that journey, that your work needs to play a positive role in your life, because otherwise you would be looking after your children and not dedicating time to it. And I think for us, if you have your social object in your articles of association, you are saying from the start, this is not just a profit-making exercise. This is what we want to do. And that informs all your decision-making. And we've had some tough decisions to make over the last 10 years. And I always credit Alex with being the guy who, when we have those tough decisions, he always brings us back to our impact. He always brings us back to that line in the articles of association. Ultimately, what are we here to do? What is the change that we're trying to create? And so I think for us, it's been amazing to have that to just guide all our decision making. It actually is much easier, I think, because you have a clear vision. And actually, anytime you're in a tough, decision making moment, if you can bring yourself back to that, it always helps bring clarity. So for us, I wouldn't say we've done loads within the Social Enterprise UK kind of network, but it's more been a guiding light for how we've made decisions, how we run the business. We give away 25% of our profits to 100% of the Hoxbees, regardless of how much work they've done in that quarter. That is just one example of something that I think is just a continuation of that line with our stated objective in the Articles of Association.
Is that what the work of the Hoxbee Foundation does? Is it?
So the Hoxbee Foundation has evolved to become the Workstyle Revolution now. So essentially what the Workstyle Revolution, so Hoxbee exists as a kind of test bed. It continues to be our experimental playground to make loads of mistakes about working in a Workstyle way, but also to produce exceptional output at the same time while we're on that journey for our clients. The Workstyle Revolution is about campaigning for change. It's about taking Workstyle to as many organizations as possible in order to facilitate as many people in the world as possible living happier, more fulfilled lives because of a world of work without bias. So it aligns with the same impact, but through Workstyle Revolution, we actually bring together charities representing those excluded groups. So we're hosting a roundtable in March at the Houses of Parliament with the CEOs of Scope, Autistica, Mind, Age UK, Carers Trust, Chronic Illness Inclusion, and working families. And so we're essentially, through Workstyle Revolution, what we're doing is bringing together individuals who believe in this change and organizations in order to firstly raise awareness of the fact that there are people who are structurally excluded from work, but secondly, to start to close those working gaps one person at a time. So by working gaps, I mean within those groups. So for example, 77% of people with autism want to work, but only 26% do. So that's a 51% gap. So what we're working to do through the Workstyle Revolution is to start tangibly closing those gaps. And we do that through a variety of means.
Incredible. I love it. Alex, do you want to say?
Can I just add something which I think ties to something that you were saying earlier, Frances, about communication? Because one of the things that we have realized, I think, over the years of working this way is that our sense of purpose, or the reason why we exist, the thing that's written into our articles, as Lizzie said, is the thing that we always communicate to members of Hoxby and to the Workstyle Revolution. Is our reason for being. And when people are located anywhere and working at any time, that's the thing that bonds them, not the office pool table or the canteen. It's the reason for being there. And that matters more than anything material. It goes deeper and it creates a bond and a culture and a sense of direction. And when you talked about how, internal communications is often neglected, I think it's actually increasingly essential for leaders and for brands to be communicating internally with real thought and clarity. And I think being a social enterprise gives you a lot of that straight away if you have a clear sense of what you're doing, why you're doing music. But I think that from a skills point of view, internal communications is becoming increasingly critical skill for leaders to be able to write engaging content, for want of a better word. A lot of internal communications now is delivered asynchronously. We deliver it through video, through written message, through audio message, different mediums to deliver it. And we have to become very confident and capable at delivering those messages through the appropriate mediums ourselves. And we've learned that skill, but it's a skill that a lot of leaders and people who are communicating in organizations need to get good at and to take seriously, because it's impacting the effectiveness of their teams and the impression of their brand, what it feels like to be an employee within that brand. So that's increasingly important and increasingly an area of work that we're getting involved in with our clients too.
You can see me nodding away, just like you were before. I couldn't feel more strongly about this stuff. And, I talk about this not infrequently, but I am the daughter of a group psychoanalytic therapist, and that psychotherapy is therefore a kind of second language to me that I was brought up on. And so the link that I want to make with having mentioned that is another problem I have with toxic marketing bullshit is there's a lot of shiny stories going out there and not enough of a space, let's say, to offer for people to reflect on some of the shadow sides of stories as businesses. And my academic background is all around corporate sponsorship. I dedicated my undergraduate and postgraduate dissertation papers 20 years ago to this subject, which still turns me on. And it's how to kind of work with, let's say, some less savory details in the story of an organization and not feel that we need to shy away from them, not to say greenwash or but to just have them exist in the story. And my model for working with businesses is different from yours. You know, I want to hold the hand of a founder for a year and have them feel really supported as individuals as they go along their way. And it might be that the outcome they're looking for is to be able to step away with a sense of confidence that they're leaving a legacy that they're proud of and that other people feel part of and able to continue for them. Maybe they'd like to set up a foundation. Maybe, you know, it's just a case of the people that they're working with feeling engaged. And again, to your point, Alex, this is why I'm very clear that I don't use the phrase employee well-being. I use the phrase employee engagement. I'm not looking to suggest people should just put some nice yoga sessions in here and there, or indeed just appoint a coach. It's getting those people to feel part of the story of the founder. So
I think it's so interesting, Frances, because I think one of the things that, you know, for us is about being open, that it's not all rosy. So in the book, one of the things we talk about is how many mistakes we've made. You know, we have spent the last decade working out how to work in a work style way through trial and error. And clients have always had an exceptional output from that. But behind the scenes, we're making mistakes, but we're learning from them. And it's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do something truly revolutionary and truly new, is to learn from that. And through Workstyle Revolution, one of the initiatives we're setting up at the moment, it's called the 21. It's essentially following the journeys of 21 people who are structurally excluded from work, finding work for them, and then following them on the journey in doing that work. And the 21 employers who we are looking for at the moment in order to employ those individuals, one of the things we're saying to them is, you need to be willing to be open about this not all being straightforward. It's going to be a journey. And it's in the tough times and being candid about where it's been tough that I think we really learn the most, but also we connect with people and organizations on a profound level. So I think it's something that we believe in and probably have only recently really started to become vocal about, the importance of being transparent. And we've always been transparent with the Hoxbys about the journey that we've been on and the bumps in the road. And no, I defy any small business to not have had some, but I think some founders aren't open about them, whereas others are.
Yeah.
I think that it comes from a desire to be authentic as well, particularly when you're trying to communicate in a distributed way. You know, we're not in the same room. And actually, I find that it's really obvious if you're not being authentic in communications that are like this, much more so than it is when you're in a room, I find. But anyway, the point being that authentic communication is key for trust building, which is central to enabling globally distributed people, teams to function. Frankly, you need that authenticity, and you need to believe that the information is being made visible to you. Otherwise, you can quickly disconnect and disengage with what's going on. So yeah, it's increasingly the way, I think, for leaders to communicate, but it feels difficult. You know, I remember when Lizzie and I first started recording videos, we'd spend ages and take multiple takes to put a video together, and it would be a 90-second video, and we very quickly realized that was not sustainable. We needed to just do it in one take, be okay with the fact that it's not perfect, but it is authentic, and as a result, it's perfect.
Yeah. And we, you know, in the Best World Braver world, we firstly try to help people understand the concept of watch, read, listen to, do, which is to say that people have got different learning styles. And so when you have produced a piece of content, it's worth repurposing it, not least to save your own time trying to produce new stuff, but just because you do need to produce stuff a number of times for different people's learning journeys. But also, I don't do video either. I hate it. You'll never see me on social media with videos of myself.
Yeah.
I've tried, but I've had to come to understand that I write better, I'm happier in this kind of setting, or, you know, audio, and that's okay. And it's finding the thing that you know, person trying to put themselves out there feels most comfortable to do. I mean, the whole thing about the shadow side, I want to give people permission to be okay to kind of do what they need to do in the world. And where I'm coming from is, since the 7th of October, I went through about 6 weeks where I was so pregnant with this new business, Francis Focal Story Strategist, but at the same time, I was really held back by the sort of imposter syndrome of who the hell am I? The world is falling apart. What's going on in Israel is so awful, I can't bear it. Who am I to be helping founders of farmland, or like leaders of areas in England with farmland, turning them into glamping sites and yoga studios or pubs? What is that? And then I realized that's all I can do. All I'm qualified to do is work here and now in this tiny way to shift the dial 1 degree, because I can't possibly fly to Israel and have a conversation with somebody that's going to have the impact I would like to see. So I'm not going to continue to worry about that. I'll just do what I can over here and encourage as many people to do what they can in their local communities, even if it's just a tiny thing. So, we're 3 white people having a conversation here. I might well be working with a founder who feels, that they've been privileged enough, or they're, as I say, they've inherited some farmland and they really care about hedgerow and they really care about environmental friendliness, but they're sort of held back by this sense of privilege, held back by, nobody needs to hear from me. Nobody needs to hear that my family have inherited this farmland and that 300 years ago there was some less than ideal sort of employment situations going on. But in fact, it's exactly that story. It's exactly that, I inherited this family from my farm for my family. Yes, I'm this, but here's what we're going to do from today. And here's the little I can do in this community today, and educationally, and, in terms of hedgerow, because that's all you can do. So do that. And I want to empower people, not just to kind of air the shadow side of things, but to feel that they are the best person placed because of that, right? Back to our original point about things happening and everyone's got something.
We say that about Workstyle Revolution, that everyone in that community and who believes in Workstyle only has to tell one person, only has to do one thing, one small thing, and collectively it will make a big difference. And I think we, as change makers, and particularly with social change, we're perpetually frustrated about the glacial pace of change. We want to change things quickly, overnight. Why are we working in an industrial age system when we live in the digital age? But actually, what we recognize is that if you can bring people together and each person can make their one small change, whether it's to their life or just spreading the word or giving someone a copy of the book, then together we can create that change. And you have to be patient, because momentum is building and the change will come. We just need to not expect ourselves to be the ones that create the entirety of that change. It just can't be done.
And I'm mindful of time and the limits that we have in this conversation because of how busy you guys are. I could talk to you all day. The power of this conversation is, now that we both know more about each other's work, we can think about each other in the future. And I'd like others here to be thinking about you in the way that you would like to be considered for, in terms of how you can help them. What would be the way in which you would like people to consider you for their projects? What's your ideal client these days, and what do you want to do more of in the world? What do you have capacity for, and what do you have limits with? What do you actively not want to be? Who do you actively not want to be contacted by? I mean, you've sort of stipulated that they need to have the same values as you, but who's your ideal client, if you like?
Yeah, probably nobody who's trying to sell us an office space. I think that's probably the least appropriate contact that we could have. Look, I think the reality is that a lot of the work that Lizzie and I are doing at the moment is to close the gaps for the excluded groups that exist in the world. We're trying to close those gaps one person at a time. And Lizzie's talked already about the 21 who we're starting with. So we're trying to create work for people, people who have a reason why they can't access traditional 9-to-5 place-based work. And so we want to hear from employers, organizations who are progressive enough to think about taking someone on in a non-typical arrangement, a work style arrangement, whereby the individual chooses when and where they work, and they're judged on their output rather than their presence. And we'll support the individual and the employer to make that happen. And the more we learn through the act of doing that, the more we'll be able to hopefully create templates, tools, resources that make it a scalable initiative for employers and individuals to match. So that's a lot of the work we're doing through the Workstyle Revolution. For Hoxby, we're working a lot with organizations to create the cultural conditions for inclusive working when you're not in the same place or at the same time, when the terms are different. So larger organizations perhaps, or people who are working in cultural transformation change and that sort of thing are ripe for Hoxby to help. And hopefully the two can come together to create a more inclusive future of work for everyone.
I really love that. And also I'm thinking about my own client base, which will be slightly smaller in terms of the size of business, but nevertheless, you know, what I bring to the table is a network of experts in the 4 different fields that I want to help people with. And again, that's marketing and sales, employee engagement, customer loyalty, and community care. And having worked in 20 years across all of those sectors and continually meeting people who are experts in this field, that puts me in a position of being able to, once I'm in there and holding the hand of the founder or leader, work with them to see where there might be further room for improvement, because they might like to, for example, bring in a coach, bring in a videographer, or indeed bring in people like you, because, you know, out of when we've done the piece of work, which is to prioritize which of those 4 areas needs the most love and care, albeit through the story that we've identified as being the story of them and the story of change. What else needs to be done? What else is the budget available? You know, what is the outcome that they'd like to see? Because then I can pull in on my friends like you guys and whoever else to help make that, you know, turn out that way. So I don't know if my clients are going to be too small for the likes of you, but I'd like still to be able to come to you and, you know, sound you out as experts in this area. And I'm super grateful for this conversation. Lizzie, do you have any final reflections before I let you go?
The thing that I would always say is, for anyone listening to this and for you, you know, the smallest but most impactful thing that we think that everyone can do is use the word Workstyle. Just in a conversation with the cat, you know, just try using it, and you will build more profound human connections with people by talking about it. Secondly, read the book if you haven't already, and let us know your honest feedback. Some of our best conversations have been with people who want to pick the book apart. We love a good debate about it. And then the third thing is, come and join us, because we have a community, workstylerevolution.com/join. It's open to anyone who believes in this. And you can give as much or as little time as you want. You can just be a part of it and do nothing, or you can give time and actually help progress the movement forward. So I guess those would be our parting 3 words for everyone. And yeah, we love honest feedback, so we welcome any challenge or debate on Workstyle as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And you'll find me over there in the community because I joined it myself. Where would you like people to go to buy the book?
Well, we always say go to your local independent bookshop, but realistically, we're also on Amazon as well, and we know that that's easiest for lots of people. We're also in the library for people for whom buying the book is too much at the moment.
Or indeed, if they want to prop up the amazing library system that this country should be proud of, and we should all be supporting because it's awesome. So yeah, thanks so much. Much love. I don't think this will be the last time we see each other. And
I'm quite sure it won't.
Yeah, just thank you so much for your time. Check them out, Hoxby. These guys absolutely know what they're talking about, all things Workstyle. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Francis.